Hello and welcome to Designer Discussions with Jason and Miriam. Our guest today is Loren Schirber, the owner of Castle Building and Remodeling in the Twin Cities. Welcome to the Designer Discussions podcast with
Jason
and Miriam. Tune in each week where we talk about marketing, PR, and business advice for design professionals.
Thanks, Miriam. We're happy to be here with Loren. Loren, if you would just introduce yourself to our guests so they can know who you are.
Sure. My name is Loren Schirber. I'm the second generation owner of Castle Building and Remodeling in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We've got about 30 employees, do a lot of kitchens, baths, basements. Interiors are our specialty. We do a few additions. We do small projects, up to really big whole house remodels.
We want to talk about a lot today because when we had the intro call last week, we talked about a lot in terms of AI and all that. We want to get into all that. But what I want to talk about first, you said second generation. So talk a little bit about actually having to take over the firm from someone else and what that's like.
Sure, yeah. My dad started the company in 1977 after he had worked for other contractors and thought I could do this better than them, and went out on his own and put out his shingle and worked for many years out of an office, and then for a while out of our house when I was growing up. Out of the basement there'd be employees coming and going, and he got me kind of drug along to some job sites when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and had a kind of this vision of me being a carpenter or working for the company. And I think I picked up shingles on a job site for a couple weeks, basically long enough of pushing that wheelbarrow and pitchfork and shingles off the ground to decide that I was going to buy a car and get a job somewhere else. And so that lasted a couple weeks. I said, this manual labor is not for me, Dad. And learned it and I started doing I worked at a nursing home for a year, but then I did sales at Circuit City and just loved talking to people and selling and stuff. And ended up going to school for marketing and entrepreneurship and worked in the corporate world a couple years, and then joined my dad's business because it was a good entrepreneurial opportunity when I was getting my MBA. And it's like really fun to work in a small business after I had come out of the corporate world for a year or two. That family business, you can really get things done, or in small business, like if you want to do something today, you can do it today. That doesn't have to be 100 meetings. And so, yeah, working together with my dad was interesting and fun. I learned a lot. There was a lot of kind of him saying like, we've already tried that, it didn't work, or, he had different, theories on ways to do things. And so there was a little bit of headbutting on I thought I knew a lot about marketing. He thought I didn't know anything about remodeling, so which was true, but I was willing to go out and talk to people and come back and ask questions and stuff. So um, rather than have a ladder rack on my truck and get up on people's roof, I was helping with more sales and marketing. And so when I joined the business, we were in my dad's basement and doing $500,000 a year in revenue. More exteriors and roofs and things like that. And over the years, we grew little by little, which when you're $500,000 in revenue, like growing by 130 grand or something is 30%, so but it can be one more job. So we eventually hired a designer and then opened a design studio, and kind of got out of the basement, and people in the neighborhood said, "Oh, welcome to the neighborhood." We've said we've been here, but now so that kind of first physical location was really helped us get a lot more leads, and we saw the potential of kind of having a design studio, and from an employee standpoint, like going to somebody's basement to work or whatever is not ideal. So it really helped kind of take us up to the next level. And my dad and I worked together for about 5 or 6 years, and we kind of ended up butting heads a little too much, of both wanting to be in charge and both thinking we knew the right way to do things. And, I'd say like I had kind of like the MBA brain and training, and I was like, everybody's got to have their role. We need systems and processes. We need to focus. I think he had been doing it for 30 years, and he's like, yeah, but I really want to do this really unique job over here because it's different and it's new. And I think he was kind of the nucleus where it was like all things revolve around him. And I'm like, that's not a scalable model, like, and it's not a real model to like clone you and say we're gonna have a second, like person who does sales and project management and oversees design. And so we kind of broke things down a little bit more, but ultimately, to save our holidays and get along, like we decided to break up. Um, I would say like that it's not easy to break up with your dad or your business partner. You're kind of talking about ideas and options of how to do it, and like all of the options kind of seem bad. So it's one of those least worst case scenario talks, basically. Like, how do we how do we split things up and go our separate ways and both be amicable and like come to a solution that works for him financially and works for me financially, and ultimately like that building went to my dad and he became the landlord and got some assets, and I became the blue sky. I got the name, the employees, the phone number, the past customer lists, and kind of got into a business at a low down payment of kind of work for equity basically. So I was lucky to be able to join a family business, help grow it, invest my time and not get paid and kind of get some equity, and then eventually my dad worked a few more years, kind of running a small remodeling business, and I thought he'd never retire, but he retired and is enjoying himself and traveling and you know going up to the North Shore and seeing the Great Lakes and seeing the world. So it's worked out, and we keep making our payment to him for the building, and he gets to retire. So now in the milestones, I've been doing it half my life, so that's kind of like uh, crazy to think about.
Okay. Good
Yeah.
deal. So now that we have a little bit of the history, let's talk about where you are today and how has AI changed what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So where we're at today is we've got four design studios. I've got a team of about 30 folks. I've got drafters and four interior designers, one person who spells those special projects or, smaller projects that are less design driven. I've got some project managers, like four project managers and a warehouse manager and a production manager, and about 15 carpenters in the field who do drywall, tile, paint, trim, finish work, framing. So we do a lot of the work ourselves. So AI though, I'm relatively new on the AI train. Maybe about 6, 8 months ago, when we got our new CRM, I started kind of really playing with it and embracing it. And in a big picture, like I think AI agents that we've been able to train to kind of like help interact with people on our website that are wanting to set up a phone call or who call in and we're not able to answer. Then have an AI agent set up that talks to them and gets their information and helps schedule a phone call with me for an upcoming date. And so those have been the biggest things I'd say. Not that the AI agents have like replaced employees or anything, but they've kind of supplemented and allowed us to connect with clients and opportunities that we might have missed before. Because we used to have a lot of folks who would leave us a voicemail and we'd call them back and not get them and never end up connecting. So now, it may not make sense to have a 24-hour answering service, but an AI agent can be there to answer anytime, and not too much work to kind of program them or kind of upload documents and point them towards your website and train them and get them up to speed on what they should say and shouldn't say, and um, facilitate those conversations or get people connected, or get the initial consultation scheduled anyways. That's been where we've had the most success. I've played around with a whole bunch of other AI stuff. And there's some amazing, like, I'm big into workflows and systems and everything. And so using kind of AI to like set up those workflows and systems and connect the different like software um, has been another area where I've had success, just to be able to like say, type in kind of layman's terms. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, connect this data from the CRM to this platform in SharePoint where we have operations, and I wanted to do this. And, this Zapier is pretty amazing, like, where you can kind of like explain what you want this app to do, and it'll start to code it all and make the changes and ask you, would you rather have it do this or that? I need you to approve this. And you say, okay. And then it starts doing it all. And it's just like, wow, the future's here. So
Now, talk to us about how your team has embraced AI, because what we talked about last time is that you had talked to your team about how you use AI to train them, not replace them. And that's something I hear a lot in the industry, that a lot of design and remodeling professionals are afraid that AI will replace them. But you talked about how you use it to train your staff and enhance what they do, not to replace them. So, just talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of apprehension. I think some of the team members are kind of concerned about the environment and water usage and electrical costs going up and how AI is going to affect our future. And I think there's maybe some contempt for the idea that like AI could do their job or, come up with a kitchen layout or help make the right suggestion for countertops. So that's kind of, the starting point, I'd say, for some of the employees. I mean, other employees maybe say, oh, yeah, I've been trying it out and I, used it to quickly show what this backsplash tile would look like on this kitchen, or like people wanted to know what this grout would look like on that tile. And like we used to have to make a sample board and grout it and show them. And now I can like quickly show them what three different grouts would look like on the tile. And so I think people are starting to embrace it a little bit. You have to, because the clients are coming to you and saying like, I put together this thing with three windows on this wall, and that's what I want it to look like. And can you do this, or can you put together this glass railing like AI came up with, right? So you kind of got to be able to do the same thing back. So we're seeing that. And then I guess, yeah, what I'm just trying to get across to employees is like that I think that AI is here to help make them better employees, more productive employees, help save them time. A good example would be like they could spend like 2 hours in Chief Architect, like adding like plants and tables and furniture and doing a high quality rendering that takes the computer like hours to run to get a, print worthy picture. Or we can take a relatively simple rendering and put it into AI and say, make this look like a photo and add, appliances on the countertop. And in a minute, you've got like a really nice updated picture. So I think those are some of the time saving things that the team is starting to play with. On the production side, we've been playing with some tools like that help compare plans and specs, and so find discrepancies. This one says 2x8 framing, and that one says 2x10 framing, or this says pier footings, and that says 8 pier footings, and this says 6 pier footings. Which one is it? So um, there's a tool that a friend of mine created called Construct AI. Michael Anshel put that together. We've been testing that out, and then just testing that against like Claude or other LLMs that ask it to do the same thing, see which one works better. At a minimum, like it might catch some things that we didn't catch, but we are thinking about trying to build our own tool just to keep our data private. So far, we've been kind of like looking back at projects and uploading things and saying, would this have caught that mistake that we know ended up costing us money? And sometimes it would have caught it, that this says 43-inch mirror, not a standard size 42-inch mirror. And we've got the pricing in for the 42-inch mirror, not the 43-inch custom mirror. So those are the kind of things that would be you start looking at 8 pages of plans and 7 pages of scope. It's easy. If you're a project manager, you've got 2 days to review this project and get up to speed. And, it's going to be hard to catch all those things. So, yeah, those tools I think are what AI are really good at, is reviewing, comparing.
Okay. So what you heard from your team in terms of what AI is doing, in terms, you had talked about how it helps you on the call side to answer calls and do that, helps you with reviewing of the documents. What have you heard from your team has helped them save the most time?
It's been slow on the embrace. I think it's really been on our marketing side of things, right? Like for me personally, like it's been nice to have like say call summaries. Like if I hit record when I'm on my CRM, and my initial phone call with the folks are recorded in the CRM, and then you can pull up a summary, and like my salespeople might be like, okay, I saw we got this project coming up, what's this all about? And I can kind of say, here's the summary, or here's the recording, like go back and listen to this, or here's the summarized points. I'd say that's been a nice time saver. I think it's just like, only so many people come to your website and try to contact you. And so like that, you lose conversions with people leaving voicemails and stuff. So it's just making sure you're getting each person through those steps, and booked or a call scheduled, is probably the most valuable. Not a huge time. I mean, it's a time savings and that somebody doesn't have to be there to answer the phone, all hours of the day or so yeah, that's definitely been time savings. I've spent a lot of time on it, playing with things. There's a lot of trial and error, and um, I'd say that the key part I think is like testing and using logic and like if somebody tells you they left a message and you're like, what message are you talking about? It's like it's out there somewhere. Like, what am I missing? What's not connected? What email didn't notify me that I got a voicemail that I missed? Or what what email box is this going to? Um, and then there's, transcripts and all this stuff is digital. So like looking back at the AI agents and seeing how they're handling those calls and figuring out maybe why there's confusion or why this customer, thought we were coming out when we were really giving them a phone call, those kind of things like, and then going back and retraining to say, you know, we're only booking phone calls, not home appointments. Don't tell people we'll come out there, or going back and changing the pop-up widget so it says schedule a call, just making what you're asking them to do as clear as possible, so that people aren't confused because uh the AI is getting pretty good where some of these, phone calls, like 3-4 minutes into the phone call, the person's like, hey, wait, are you an AI agent? So it's pretty good that the AI agent can like kind of fool them for that long, or it's not obvious 100% that this is, a computer you're talking to. So it's
So
been good.
awesome. So you talked about the marketing side, and you actually have a background in marketing. From how you used to do marketing with the company when you started, how has it changed to how you do marketing now?
Yeah, when I joined my dad's business, he didn't do a ton of marketing. It was a lot of past customers and referrals. So at the time, it might have been, reaching out to past customers or sending out a Christmas card, you know, a sign on the side of a vehicle, job signs in the front yard, sponsor a local baseball team, something like that. And I think shortly after we maybe started putting some print ads in the local newspaper, just to get our name out there. Things started to really change or pick up when we did open up that storefront, or the design studio, just because I like permanent signage. Like if you spend, $6,000 on a box sign or a backlit sign or something like that, it's there for like 20, 25 years. And sure, you eventually got to replace LED lights or fix something. But the 8,000 or 10, I kind of try to use real estate as a asset where like if I'm going to have a design studio, it should be in a nice neighborhood where I want jobs and where there's like 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 cars a day going by, like on an artery to a highway or at a stoplight where people are going to have to stop and see my purple awnings. So that was kind of the first shift in like how we marketed or got leads. And that, originally is more of a physical presence in the neighborhood, like being known because people drive by every day is definitely helpful. Over the years, our 4 locations have really made like a lot of our Google searches, fortunately or unfortunately, are like for our name, basically. Where I could do better is in the like kitchen remodeler Minneapolis or basement remodeler St. Paul. And I'm working on that, SEO, AEO kind of being found more. But yeah, so that made me a little bit lazy is just having all those people like find us or know us. But yeah, over time, really like the marketing has shifted much more to like digital marketing. I've had more epiphanies lately on like the it's not that like the traditional advertising methods don't work. Like you can put an ad in the local newspaper and people will, come to your event and they will come to your open house and meet with a designer, those kind of things. But um it's just getting a little bit worse each year. Or like I have a lot of competitors who love home shows and home tours, and everything's in-person events. And it's kind of like, how many people can you meet at the convention center and get to sign up for a consult, get them on the calendar? And they might get 20 people from a 3-day show, at the US Bank Stadium, but like 8 cancel their appointment. You got 12 left. And then you maybe meet with 12 and a lower percentage close than a normal lead who just contacted you. And it's hard, because they might get $1 million worth of work or $500,000 worth of work out of it. So I cannot complain too much, but we're just not as good at setting those appointments and closing those like leads in person. So I've decided, like, and I'll go to those shows or something and I'll get 2 leads, and then 5 people will fill out a form on my website that weekend while I'm there working all weekend in person event. So I'm shifting much more towards digital and like online advertising. And when you start to look at, your weekly screen report pops up and said you had 4 hours and 13 minutes a day on your cell phone or whatever. Like, I have other competitors who are like, yeah, we're going to put hockey ads on the at sport events. Our logo is going to be on the hockey ads because people got to sit there for 20 minutes between periods and they're going to see our logo. And I'm like, no, they're going to be looking at their phone and they're going to see my ad, right? Like, so yeah, we've leaned much more heavily into like targeting ads, retargeting ads to people who have been to our website, or high intent people who have searched for and been online looking at related things to remodeling, so we're really like honing in on the digital side of things, adding more content to our website. Like we just added a 2026 remodeling cost guide. It's a 54-page PDF with different types of projects, how much a kitchen costs, how much a kitchen makeover costs, how much a bathroom costs, how much it costs to add a bathroom in the basement, how much a second floor costs. And so, with some frequently asked questions and other things that the search engines and answer engines like. And so we're trying to lean into like our next thing will be like, we did in-person events for many, many years, like kitchens remodeling 101, bathroom remodeling 101. And the theory was we want to get people into our design studios to see our space and meet us. And we had pretty, mixed success. Like we would get 3 people to one of these classes, we would get 20 people to one of these classes. The designers kind of said, like, I never really got any great projects out of those. It was more people that were like trying to figure out how to do it themselves, or like weren't quite a strong enough lead to call you to come out and give you a bid, And so we've just decided we're going to like take those classes and that content and make a video on each one: kitchen remodeling 101, bathroom remodeling 101. And so that'll be some content that we can, cut up into snippets. We can share, mid form, long form. We can work with some vendors to say, like, not just have a Loom video with a designer in the corner and a PowerPoint, but we're going to like cut away to like a cabinet factory tour, and show you how the cabinets are made in Cabinets 101, and then go to the appliance store and get a tour of appliances and Appliances 101 from our partner, at All Inc. or Warner Stallion. And so kind of like a This Old House show, but focused on kitchens or baths or basements are, top areas. And so we're kind of like, if we can make this video once and people can watch it whenever they want, um, younger folks tend to like be less likely to come to those in-person events. That's my own theory, is like the parade of homes and the remodeler showcases and the like tours and the convention center home remodeling shows and stuff tend to attract the demographic. It's like about 65 years old on average. And that's a great demographic. They have a lot of money. They're retiring. They got required minimum distributions and, getting their houses ready for, the next part of their life, and grab bars and all those kind of things. And so that's a good market, but it's not the whole market. Our clients on average are, between that 40 and 70 years old usually. And so those younger demographics are on their phones, they're on social media. And so like I've just kind of come to the conclusion that the digital marketing has a better return on investment. It's more trackable. And that if you can target it down to the right zip codes and the right people, in the right values of houses with the right incomes, and there's all that data out there, then that's a more efficient way to get them maybe to your website, to a landing page, converted to an appointment and a phone call or a home visit. And it's not to say that those other in-person events don't have value, but I just think they kind of get a little bit worse each year. You get a little lower attendance on the tour, you get a few less leads, you get a few less conversions, it costs a little bit more. And then when you really do the true math on like, what's my work weekend worth if I'm going to spend 4 days at the convention center working 12-hour days, or what could I be doing instead, right? So um, yeah, so I've just shifted over time from those in-person events and those kind of like more physical like mailers and more like print ads to like, online and electronic, um, focusing more on SEO. We're getting a little bit into pay-per-click, but more lately it's been kind of this intent-based audience targeting, for folks who show interest in remodeling and are in our areas.
Yeah, Lauren, I thought it's really interesting what you said about like some of the content that you're developing and like for me, it's like thought leadership that you have like in your area in those particular topics. And when you were talking about especially the videos, I'm like, why don't you try to talk to some of your local TV stations? I'm like, because people love that type of content and they may not run your video, but it may inspire them to do something similar because you've already set it up. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to, and I know we briefly touched on you wanting to do PR, like when we had our
Sure.
first call. And I'm like, I think you're already doing so much, and you have so much, and it would take very little to start pulling in some good media coverage that actually would help you a ton with AI visibility and driving leads that way. So yeah, that was my thought really, but.
Yeah, no, that is something that, as we look into like the AI visibility and where they get their
Hmm.
sources and everything, I used to be better at like watching like the help a reporter out or like some of those like email streams and
Hmm.
stuff.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
It is, yeah, to
Yeah.
get back to them and yeah. Um, it is. So, but I would get some more, or I'd send out some
Mm.
press releases to the local
Yeah.
media, and just being known or having your name in front of them
Hmm.
when the news needed a segment about,
Yeah.
soaring prices or whatever it was, you'd have to try to go on and figure out a good way to like spin it. So it
Hmm.
was true, but, a good time to remodel still because,
Yeah. And
so
and so you were really one of the very early adopters because with AI and how it's changed search and SEO, a lot more people well, once they figure out how valuable earned media placements actually are for that to drive that kind of visibility. So yeah, that's
I,
it's the resurgence of PR for small businesses for sure.
I think so. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's interesting how many different language models there are and how each one looks at
Hmm.
different sites and sources. And
Yep.
I just had a call yesterday with my marketing kind of agency, and they were talking about you need better Yelp reviews. And I said, I don't
Hmm.
like Yelp. Like Yelp is an extortionist. They try to like make me pay just to be, to show my good reviews. And, I really had no reviews in about 6 or 8 years. And the ones that are on there are like things where things slip through the cracks, or we didn't get somebody their bid when we said we would.
Mm.
And they go and, it's not like we screwed up a huge project. It's like we didn't get their voicemail returned. And it's hard because it's 6 or 8 years ago. So now I need to like bury
Yeah.
those with good reviews and find the happy
Yeah.
people to go on and give us more good reviews. And I kind of said, I don't care about Yelp, but now that the bots and the large language models do
Hmm.
care about Yelp, I have to care about Yelp. And so, it's yeah, it is changing the like where we have to put our focus or our effort to like
Yeah, the sad
make
thing
sure
is
that
you have to care about everything
I
now because they
know
all pull
Reddit,
from
yeah,
different sources. Yeah,
hmm
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but it's yeah, I heard something on a different podcast yesterday that, 51% of web traffic is now bots, and like
Mhm.
more traffic on websites are from bots than humans now. And so, if you're not optimizing your website for those bots, you're missing out. And I guess it was interesting because we just built a new website in Framer, and I watched a lot of the Framer videos on SEO and visibility, and mostly it was kind of the videos focused on accessibility as well as like SEO, and it clicked to me or dawned on me that like humans who have problems or disabilities, like say blind or uh,
Hmm.
bots are basically a blind human, like they, they're, if you don't have a meta description of what this picture is, like so
Hmm.
optimizing for
Hmm.
accessibility is really also optimizing for bots or um
That's really interesting
of
viewpoint.
can
Yeah, no, that
yeah.
makes so much
Well, that
sense.
was my takeaway anyway. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah,
What I like to ask all of our guests, the young Lord,
yeah.
what would you advise him if he was sitting next to you right now? All that you went through, what would you advise him? And this actually helps out some of our listeners because
Mhm.
they're all at different journeys in their remodeling career. So if
Sure.
the young Lauren was sitting next to you right now, what would you tell him?
I think the biggest thing I would tell them is like to focus and specialize. Like, when you work on folks' homes, there's so many different areas that you can cover. Like, we have 1,000 line item spreadsheet for our estimator. And it's helpful to be able to tell people like, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, we can help you with that, we can pretty much help you with everything. But I think it's also like really, really important to know like where your strengths lie, how you are positioned in the marketplace, like where you win versus where you lose. Like we do a lot of accounting and job costing, and we can see like what the gross profit is of each job or each type of job. And we have a general idea of like which types of jobs are the most profitable or that we're best at. But what that doesn't necessarily tell you is like how much work went into like producing those gross profit dollars. And so if it's like even if the percentage is the same, but the work for your design crew was twice as long, right? Like or if your production crew had twice as many hiccups and redos and delays or things like that, like it doesn't necessarily show up in the gross profit numbers all the time. If the mistake was the flooring people's and they paid for it, but it delayed the project and made twice as much work and six more meetings and things like that. So it's really kind of just saying like what is easy for us, right? Like which, and that goes back to the marketing of like, what
Hmm.
are you doing well? What are you producing efficiently? What seems easy? And where are the customers the happiest? What takes the least amount of work in the design process, and what's the easiest to sell on the front end as a salesperson? Because you don't really want to go on 100 leads to get one project. It'd be nice to like get one out of three or one out of four. And so knowing and focusing, I would have, yeah, I would have said, you know, narrow down your focus a little bit. Focus on like interiors versus additions or whatever it is. Just because I guess the what I've come to realize over a long time in the industry is like in consumers' minds or just as you look at the competition, the like pure play people are going to win, right? So like if I looked at a company that was for sale that just did decks and they sell one kind of decking. Um, they have their standards and processes down for decks really well. They tear off and get it in the dumpster, and the dumpster goes away the first day. And this guy goes to Menards and gets the lumber, and they do this type of butt joints so that these things don't crack, and they always do this with the risers, and they're like half the price of us on these decks. I'm like, how is it possible they can make any money, on this deck or whatever? And like, and it's because all they do is decks. So like, and if you kind of go down the line of like, if you're only doing like kitchens and baths, you can be really good at kitchens and baths. You can be totally focused on kitchens and baths, like, and you can probably beat other people who like say only do bigger projects or you just use subcontractors or whatnot. So we've just come to find that, with our in-house crews, we can do a lot of the labor in-house. And if we can do a lot of labor in-house, we can be really competitive versus like folks who just sub everything out. And so some of our bigger design build competitors that really only do like whole house projects and additions and, projects over 100 or $150,000 can compete really well against us on those bigger projects, but they can't compete with us on a $60,000 bathroom model. That's just too small. Like they don't want to do projects that small. It doesn't make sense to have 17 subcontractors that they manage. It's a lot of trips. It's just as much work almost as the big project. And so they don't want to do those small projects. So I think kind of just knowing like that there's, a handyman niche and there's an exteriors niche and there's a kitchen and bath niche and there's a design build niche and there's a, garage builders niche and an ADU builders niche. And so at least if you're going to like, and that's who's going to win is those pure play people for the most part, or they're going to have advantages a lot. So, and homeowners want to put people into like a bucket. If you do 17 things, it's like people are like, well, they're my kitchen remodeler because they did my kitchen, right? And so they don't think about you as the handyman or the, big addition person. So I've come to like think more about it like at a minimum, I maybe should have some different brands that do these different things because, in your marketing or positioning, you know, and or it's a different process, right? To be the most competitive in that kind of like hierarchy, basically, like you might need a slightly different design process or a slightly different production team to be able to compete. You might use more subs on this type of project. Yeah, so I think that focus and that like trying not to be everything to everybody, but trying to pick your vertical and know which niche you fit in and winning a niche versus trying to win 5 niches. That's my latest
I
takeaway.
love that. And that ties into what I talk about all the time on this podcast about knowing your audience and then really being an expert in that. So this has been a great talk. For any of our audience that wants to reach out to you, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, Castle BRI is our website. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good way to reach me as well. Loren Schirber. Yeah, those would be good ways to reach out to me.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Loren. And for any of our audience that want to reach out to you, they know how now. So we hope to hear and see you all in 2 weeks on Designer Discussions. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Designer Discussions and all of the helpful information. Subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. We look forward to having you back next week. For more information on the podcast and the marketing studio, visit designerdiscussions.com and follow us on social media.